Sounds good. Thank you for having me here. Just want to start with an introduction. I started my career as an intern at Google, spent 2 internships there, worked on Google Cloud's enterprise, and then after that I worked on DDoS attacks. Later on, I joined several startups which failed. Joined the layer 1 in the ICO boom in 2017. Didn't work out, and then I joined Facebook, spent 2 years at Facebook working on releasing Facebook Web. And 3 years ago, I joined Near Protocol as the first infrastructure engineer, and Calimero started as a spin-off out of Near. And today, I'm going to talk about some problems with privacy and scaling in general, and how do we adopt Web 2.5 crowd here. So everybody says enterprises and Web 2 companies will never adopt blockchain. Who does agree? Nobody agrees. So I take a view that, to really have mass adoption, we have to both onboard enterprises and Web 2 companies. And the way we do it is similar how cloud and big data did it. When cloud started in like 1990s, nobody really wanted to use cloud. Companies would say, I don't want to put my data on somebody else's servers. There's security which can be compromised. There's like many, many issues. And what cloud did, they found use cases for certain companies, and then slowly more and more the adoption started happening. But we have to find the real use cases and the proper use cases to adopt this. And if you take 1990s, cloud started, and now 2008, market was super small, and then it started exponentially growing. And I think every business looking back will say, we should have adopted cloud before. And how I see it currently, we had 2 types of networks in the blockchain space. We have the public blockchains, which I call the internet of the blockchain. So all the data is public, it's visible to everybody, and we have zero-knowledge solution, but they're not a silver bullet for everything. On the other side, we had the intranets of the blockchain. So permission blockchains like Hyperledger, IBM, and others, but they were never interoperable with the public, and the tooling was very proprietary, they were very expensive. And my view is that we have to have something in between. And in Web 2.5, it's called the extranet. So it's a network which is like a hybrid between an intranet and the internet. And this is what essentially private sharding is. It bridges bridges essentially the barrier between public networks and permission networks. It's federated, it's permission, interoperable, and open source. And essentially, if you look up at this graph, so you can have a company A, company B, a DAO A, a DAO B, any consortium which can talk to a public blockchain, or they can talk to any other private blockchains, similar to how Cosmos maybe has IBC, we just do it for private stuff. And essentially, what is a Calimero? Calimero is a sidechain built on top of Near. It's customizable, it's fast, it's scalable, and it's dedicated, it has dedicated validators which are run by a set of permissioned companies or members or whatever. It supports currently Vazen and Aurora. The data is only visible to shard owners or contracts and clients with permissions to see these. And it's interoperable with public mainnets and other private shards. And on top of that, one of the biggest problems currently in deploying these permission networks is you have to have an infrastructure engineer. You have to invest a lot of time in deploying these networks. And what we did, we built a console, which is essentially AWS for a private shard, which allows you to focus on your product and not managing infrastructure and reinventing the wheel. And I'm going to go a bit deeper. So 2 ways of running Calimero. It can be either a community shard run by a DAO or a social group, and the data members can store private contracts between each other. Or it can be an enterprise shard where it's privately owned or owned by a consortium network. It has fine permissions across the stack, and it lets you protect your data while still leveraging all the business benefits of a public blockchain. And then I like to say that decentralization is not binary. Obviously, not everything is going to live on a public chain because there is scalability issues, there is privacy issues, there's regulatory issues, and we have to find ways to go around them. And just to give you some examples of use cases which are possible with private shards. So for DAOs and social groups, instead of using a multisig on a public chain, you can have a multisig, 5 people. You can run a private shard which has 5 validators, and then these validators are run by DAO members. They can deploy smart contracts between them. They can have treasury management between them. They can have auctions, private social groups, community proposals, and many more. On the other side, private networks and consortium networks are more tailored to like CBDC use cases, NFT ticketing, payments, and trade finance, where you really have like high regulatory things which you have to, oblige to. And then how it works. So we built a bridge which is fully interoperable. So you can transfer NFTs, you can transfer fungible tokens, or you can execute cross-shard calls between the shards. On top of that, we built a bridge SDK, which allows you to have a client SDK, which just allows you to set permissions, set other things on the bridge, but also you can have a contract SDK, which allows you to execute cross-shard contract calls. It's all built on NEAR. We have a permission management contract, which by default is deny all, and then you can allow certain members or parties or contracts to execute. So for example, I can say contract A on mainnet can call contract B for these specific methods. And then the bridge is actually trustless. We call it the realistic bridge. We had optimistic bridges, we had light, ZK bridges, and now what we build is a realistic bridge. So essentially what the realistic bridge does, it has a light client contract on both sides, and is able to verify all the signature for the block header. And once 2/3 of the network has signed this block header, we can say that it's valid and then build provers on top. And the execution, because of that, is really fast, because NEAR has 2 block second times. We need 5 to 10 seconds to actually transfer the facets, which in my opinion, it's pretty cool. And then the console has like 3 main purposes. Fast start. So you can connect either your cloud or your on-premise deployment, or we can host it for you. So you just, in few clicks, deploy on any cloud or any deployment your first network. On top of that, you have a dashboard which has anything you would need to run, any blockchain in the world. So you have the indexer, you have the bridge, you have, wallet integrations, you have anything you would need essentially to do, on-chain analytics, etc. And then also we believe in cross-chain communication and interactions with the public. So we implemented a marketplace which supports basic standards like fungible tokens, NFTs, multisigs, but we are also integrating other partners, DeFi projects, wallets, and I mean, essentially anything what you would host on a public network, you can just with few clicks deploy on a private shard. And essentially how it looks. So by the bottom, you have the technology, the private shard itself. So it's a customizable network. You have WASM, you have EVM. But on top, we build the infrastructure for you. You have a gateway, you have the bridge, you have a key management service, you have access permissions, you have indexes, RPC deployments, and all the other things. And then inside the console, you have all the dashboards, marketplace, explorer, analytics, oracles as a service, which allows you to deploy oracles easy, events as a service, which allows you to alert triggers, triggers or events on certain on-chain activities. We have workspaces, which are essentially sub-shards inside the shard, where you can have additional fine-grained permissions. And then basic network management, like adding validators, RPC nodes, scaling it up and down. And how I like to visualize it to people, we have the Calimero network, and it lives behind the firewall. So in normal sense, you would have a physical firewall. But in our sense, we have a software firewall, let's say, on the bridge, on the RPC level, and on the network protocol itself. And then, obviously, as I said, we are trying to integrate with the wider NEAR ecosystem. So we are working on support with wallets. You will be able to use any NEAR wallet with your private shard, if you have permission to do so. Currently, we have my NEAR wallet on testnet, and we are launching mainnet, but we are also working with Meteor, NEARIT, MetaMask, and others to integrate. Also, we are bringing Aurora EVM support. So anybody who is a Solidity developer or is coming from the Ethereum or Aurora ecosystem, they can also start spinning up their own shards. And then one-click installations on Spin, Astro, various standards. I already mentioned that. And today, we are launching our developer shards. So anybody from the audience can go to calimero.network. You can, start playing around, get your developer shard, and that's pretty much from me. Thank you, and yeah, enterprise and Web 2 adoption is near, in my opinion.